welcome back to another episode of The High Ground, powered by Premier Companies. And this is Sal Sama. I'm in the podcast room with Ryan Priest.
Hello.
Your usual host. And today we got two special guests with us. We have Brian Scheid, and you are the Director of Human Resources at Premier Ag, and you also wear another hat of environmental management.
That's correct.
All right.
Correct.
And then also David Grubbs. And David and I just met today for the first time. It's a big company. 460 employees, something like that.
Close to that. Yes. Scheid would know. Yep.
That's right. I guess he would.
Yeah, he knows.
I get to that.
He knows.
And Doug, David, you're the operations manager for transportation.
That's correct.
So all the semis and everything that we have on the road. So this is going to be an interesting podcast for sure. Ryan, before we get started, why don't we let Brian and David give their little history about how you got here today, where your career path to bring you to this point. We won't go into David's because he kind of filled me in that in the parking lot. So we'll give the professional version on that. But Mr. Scheid, how'd you get here today? What brought you to this career path?
Kind of long in the tooth. How far do you want me to go back?
Let's go back just to the 70s.
Okay. I was in grade school. No, I started. I've been in the co-op system for 31 years. Started in agronomy for about the first 18 in management as well as sales. Then in 2012, I went into safety and environmental for Legacy White River. In 2016, I also got asked to do human resources for Legacy White River. So as we're here today in the merged companies on September 1, I was asked to be the director of human resources for Premier, as well as still keep those health and safety responsibilities.
Thanks for all you do, because I know that's a big job. And David, tell us a little bit about how you got here today. Not the first part.
Okay. I'll skip that part. I got my degree from VU in safety management, and I've probably been in transportation industry for about 8 to 10 years. You know, once I hit 30, I kind of stopped counting. But so I've always watched over transportation and DOT compliance and things like that.
Oh my gosh! And that job just gets bigger and bigger, doesn't it?
Yes,
Unfortunately.
Yes, it does.
So, yeah, and we've kind of become a transportation company. As you look at our fleet as it is today, it's a lot bigger than it used to be, and I think these guys have their hands full, and a team of other folks who have their hands full keeping these trucks where they need to be, and so yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation because this does not get any less complex as we move forward. We're like 80,000 drivers short in the nation right now, or is it 800,000? Is it 80?
It's around 80 to 100,000.
So we're already short in the industry, and I think some of the topics we're going to talk about today is how it's not becoming easier to become a CDL driver.
Yeah, it's not getting any easier. There's always new regulations coming down the pipe.
Yeah, and for our listeners, I know we use a lot of initials, and CDLs means a commercial driver's license, and there's a lot that a person has to do to become a commercial driver. And I think, like most things, probably a well-intended regulation that came out of the box, and then it kept getting more and more complicated. And there's something just recently happened to make it a little more complicated on top of what it already was. So I think that's our first question: is what are some of the new commercial driver's license requirements that this is pretty recent, within the last 2 or 3 weeks, and we're sitting here on March 11th, 2022. So what just came at us in the last?
The February 7th, 2022 regulation from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration started the process of new entry-level drivers having to take this training to get their CDL. This regulation stems back to probably as early as 2012, but it's met some resistance, and like you said, Sal, it is here for a good reason. It's here to promote safe driving. We want safe semi-drivers on the road, and it's here to help promote that. But it's went through some hoops and hurdles and things that have blocked it from 2012, and here we are today in 2022, and we've got the new training.
And like most things, it's kind of like when you get the regulations, it eventually becomes like trying to swat flies with 2x4s, and this is kind of one of them. So, what's involved? Tell us what's involved in this new entry-level driver's training.
Okay, well, there's different steps that a person has to take. There's classroom training that has to be done, and of course the FMCSA, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, they have set forth each topic that has to be done, and you have to test on each topic, paper test, and each person has to get at least 80% correct, and all that's got to be turned into the federal government before they'll allow the BMV to authorize a test.
And this is on top of the regular. Is this correct? Is that this is on top of the existing regulations? So it's kind of like a cake, another layer.
Yes, correct. So I mean, basically, you'll have a classroom portion, you have a range portion, which that's just maneuvering in a parking lot, and then you'll have an on-the-road portion.
Yes, and that's correct. So to even get your CDL, to go take the test, to have your commercial driver's license, you have to have completed this course.
How many hours are we talking about?
Well, that's the fun part of it, because you read one regulation and you'll find something out, and of course it directs you to another one. So the FMCSA put forth that there's no required amount of time. You guys pick. Whatever you guys want to do, that's the amount of time. But if you look down towards the bottom of the regulation, it says that you have to comply with all state legislation, which means that in Indiana, for a Class A, you have to have 140 hours. And for a Class B, it's got to be 90 hours.
Okay.
140 hours in the classroom?
Not in a classroom, for the whole course.
Okay. So
that's classroom, range, and driving. So you're looking at roughly spending about a week doing each.
So we're looking at additional 2 weeks, maybe?
About 3.
3 to 3.5.
Yeah, 3 to 3.5 weeks.
And so at a time when we can't find school bus drivers and we can't find, and that's just a person that would fill in, right? That's not really a full-time job. Mm-hmm. But from everybody from a school bus driver to our commercial drivers that haul the trailers, the semi-trailers, is going to have to do this on an entry level.
Yep. That's
well,
correct.
That causes for a long pause right there.
Yeah, that's good. Since we're already short drivers and the supply chain's jacked up, we should probably go ahead and add some more complexity to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's not been very many years ago, probably not been very many months ago. The old channel was some book tests that you took at the B&B office. Mm-hmm. If you did a hazmat, at that point you would have to get a fingerprinted and a background check, in addition to a written test, and then you would go to a training center and drive, and you'd do a pre-trip inspection. You would do a little driving on the lot, and then you would do some driving on the road. You could feasibly do this in a couple of days.
Yes.
For a few $100s, and so with the swipe of a pen, we're now 140 hours of time, and probably several $1,000s, I'm assuming. So,
oh yeah.
So, and this is for anybody who's coming into driving a truck. Is that correct? If you've had a CDL before, you let it go, and it's time to go back and get it again. Explain that process to us.
Okay, so yes, you're right. So anybody that had a CDL prior to February 7th does not have to take these classes. The stipulations of these is that if you're going to move up from a class, say Class C to a Class B or Class B to Class A, you've got to go through this training, as well as a new hazmat. But if you had any of these things prior to February 7th, so Ryan, for example, if you did not have your CDL, or you had your CDL, I'm sorry, and you let it lapse 10 years ago, and you want to go back, you don't have to go through the entry-level driver training. You can just go through what you described as the written test and the course training with the instructor and get your license.
But if you want to go from a B to an A, which is levels of commercial drivers, if you want to go from a B to an A, you've got to go back and take the entry-level driver testing.
Correct.
That's correct.
So let's explain B and A while we're talking about it. What is A, B, and C classes on CDLs?
C is just your regular driver's license. That's what they consider a C. Class B, that is a straight truck, and a Class A is a combination vehicle, so truck and trailer.
Okay. So then to add further clarity to that, we talked about a hazmat. That's an endorsement that goes on that license.
Correct.
You can also have endorsements of doubles and triples, of public passenger, of tanker, or if you didn't have a designated public passenger, does it require all the classroom time to put that endorsement on your
passenger endorsement?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you never had if you had a Class A that had doubles and triples and tankers, and you wanted public passenger, it requires this classroom training. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
So, I just don't want to leave anybody out there with questions.
I'm still just stunned. Like even those little minivan type things, with like a school would have to they'd have to take this entry level to drive what's basically a large van.
That's correct. And that's the thing. It's the only endorsements that you have to do this with is hazmat and passengers and school bus. And of course, the license itself, like doubles and triples and tankers, you don't have to do this.
That's still just a written test at the BMV, and you get it put on.
Test.
Okay. All right.
So this sounds. What are we doing? I guess what's from a Premier Ag perspective. What's our reaction to this?
Oh, well, we're gonna start offering it. I mean, obviously, that's the company. We need to take care of ourselves. So we are registered with the Trading Provider Registry. People can go online to tpr.fmcsa.dot.gov.
One more time.
It's tpr.fmcsa.dot.gov.
We may flash that on our screen.
Big bright.
I still didn't get it.
I'm still stuck on TPR.
How big can you make that then when it flashes on the screen?
Yeah.
But yeah, we are listed on it, and we will offer Class A, Class B. I've actually got a pretty good program put together to take care of that. But like I mentioned before with previous regulations, it's not the matter of being registered with the FMCSA. We've got to register with Indiana to be a truck driving school, and then we have to have teachers registered to actually teach it.
So what do you have to do to be registered to teach it?
To be registered to teach it, there's a nice list of stuff.
Okay. So
Yeah.
it's not just any of us that hold a CDL can train?
You can. You have to have a CDL, and whatever you're teaching, you have to have the same endorsement and level of license that you're teaching. But there's additional steps. You have to have so many credit hours of college and so many hours of driver training. And
So of the of the shortage of drivers that already exists, we're going to take another CDL driver
take them off the road.
off the
and
road
teach.
to teach the class of CDL drivers.
But the trainers who have the endorsements have to go. Could they be the guys like myself who just drove in a parking lot and on the highway and took the written test?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's perfect sense.
I'm being registered to be one of the teachers myself.
Well, sign me up. I could do it too. Sounds like.
Perfect. And
Well, there's some additional background checks. So you basically have to go through again. You have to go through the same kind of.
And endorsements are not speeding and reckless driving, so we don't need. If you don't get those endorsements on your driver's license.
Right. Yeah.
And the best part about being registered is one of the requirements is that you have to get 2 letters of recommendation from people that you're not related to,
And why not, right?
attesting to your good moral character.
I wasn't sure who David was going to get those from. But
Well, who's the moral authority?
Today,
Yeah. I mean, what moral authorities? Okay. So so at Premier Ag, and we're a big company, but we're small compared to Walmart or UPS or Amazon or fill in the blank, right? I mean, so what's the difference between public and private courses? Are we going to offer our courses to the public?
We're not sure at the moment. Right now, we are listed as public in the TPR, and that's just because people can see us and reach out. People wanting to learn how to drive, and with as hard as it is to get drivers nowadays, I mean, it's a good way to recruit.
I would think that would be a really good way to see drivers.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so public was the way to go, and maybe in the future you offer that course. But I think, as Ryan attested to, I think for recruiting it makes perfect sense.
And then this will sound, maybe it's a dumb thought, but if you're going to start a class in the last 2 weeks, or will we have multiple classes per year, I guess?
Absolutely.
So we would just be revolving these classes through every month or whatever the time frame that we could get to get them through.
Yep.
I think the tricky thing to balance will be having those new hires come in that don't have CDLs and just saying, we've got this course, jump into it. I think we've got to find a way to coordinate new hires, and that's going to be tough because, as we know, they just kind of come in at a certain time, and you know, in planning this class is going to be a lot of work.
You may have already discussed this, but since we're already offering the entry level driver's training, or going to, should we go ahead and have a commercial driver's school at Premier Ag? And since we're doing the second part, should we go ahead and try to do the first part, and that way we can front to back?
I hope David was on camera when he asked that.
Well,
I seen that. I'm not sure what that. I missed the hand signal, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Missed
you're
the hand
probably
signal.
better off.
I didn't get
assess what that
kicked.
look
I
meant.
was thinking I was going to
Well,
get kicked.
Yeah, why not, Sal? Sure, that's a great idea.
well, actually, once we register with Indiana, Premier will be a driving school.
Oh, okay.
That's part of the Indiana regulation. We have to be listed as one.
So yes, that's the goal down the line. So instead of we have a new hire, instead of them going to Jeffersonville or Mitchell or Indiana or other testing sites to get their physical license, like you mentioned, Sal, we just start that and do that from start to finish.
Wow.
But there'll be a lot more work involved in that as well. But
A lot of work in that, but I can see that that's a pretty big benefit for us.
No, absolutely.
I mean, I don't know how many drivers we have. That's not important, but we have a lot, and I'm sure we're short currently. We could probably still utilize some more. And we are pretty heavy on the hazmat loads.
Oh, yeah. Yes, we are, which we will be offering that class.
Okay.
we have roughly 220 CDL drivers.
220 in the company?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's a very high percentage from our total employee count.
Yes, it really is. At 460 total employees, and we're right at, it hovers in that number, but that 210 to 220 CDL drivers, holders.
Just to maintain, I hope there's some regulators or maybe some congressmen and women listening to the podcast. What does it take to maintain a commercial driver's license? What does a person have to do? I mean, they've got to get a physical every 2 years, is it?
2 years if your blood pressure's in line, right?
Yeah, and it could be as little as 6 months if you're high blood pressure and it has to be monitored a lot. Yeah, but yes, so
A full physical every 6 to 12 months. We also have random drug testing here all the time, so that pulls you out of the seat. So there's just a lot just to maintain it. And my contention is we've made it so hard. I'll soapbox here for a second, but we have made it so hard to maintain a CDL that we're losing all the older folks that, for whatever reason, it just becomes too much of a hassle because they're just driving a log truck on the weekend or something like that, and that just puts more pressure on the whole system.
Yes.
Well, that's been depressing.
Yeah, well, but it's it's going to be interesting as I have a 17-year-old son at home, and he thinks this is kind of the path that he would like to take to come in, and so it has gotten harder. The CDL thing used to be something that you're like, I'm going to get that, shove it in my pocket. I've got a job if I need a job. Mm-hmm. It's so those folks would drift back and forth into the industry. They might get out of the industry. I know several guys who drive truck for a while, then they'll go to construction, then they'll come back in, they'll float back in. This may be a hindrance to keep those kind of guys from ever getting that license in the first place. I hope not. I hope it's a good opportunity to come in, learn it, make enough investment with it that maybe this is the kind of career that you want to stick with. As far as the trucking career, we have a lot of folks that don't per se truck all the time, but are required to have the CDLs as well with ammonia, LP, liquid fuels, and everything that we haul. They've got to have it. So
we've got I'll try to promote this among other high schools in the area, but we've got a school in our market territory, West Washington High School. And they started a commercial driver's class. This will be the second year for that class. And when we're encouraging high schools to offer this, and that's a career path for an 18-year-old to come out of, you can't leave the state, or he or she cannot leave the state, but it's a good way for them to come out of high school, and they'll always have a job. I'm not sure that this entry-level driver's test, they'll have to bolt on to that in addition, but back to your point, Brian, if a young man or woman can graduate high school or somewhere in college and have a commercial driver's license in their pocket, they will never be without a job.
Yeah, CDLs are pretty good property.
We actually have an employee whose son went through a program at a high school, the CDL program, and it's worked out real well for him. But that's, part of our job, hopefully streamlining this entry-level driver training to those new hires and to those, possibly working with the high schools and getting these things all in one simple process from start to finish.
Good. I've got a subject change. If we can change for just a second, let's talk about something a little more fun than regulations. David, can you tell us what's involved in the operations? How do you dispatch and manage? How many semi trucks and I don't even know if we know. Do we know how many trucks we have and what's all involved in all this dispatching and coordination of all this?
I've got, I think, 10 over on my side that I mainly manage.
And that's tractor trailers.
Yes, tractor trailers, and that's from hauling fuel to grain to ingredients. It's just a lot of planning on who needs people the most, because obviously we're in a driver shortage at the moment, so everyone seems to want drivers to haul loads out.
Yeah, does the liquid fuels fall under you also?
Just the transport part.
Just the transport liquid fuels. Okay. Good deal.
So over on our side, we have a lot of stations that we deliver fuel to along with the bulk plants. So, fuel's always busy.
We're pulling out of, I don't know how many terminals now, but we're all over Indiana, Kentucky, and even into Tennessee now, pulling out of terminals.
Pulling fuel out of Tennessee.
Yeah, we're pulling LP out of Indiana and at least Illinois. I know that for sure. So, yeah, we're getting around on it. So the 18-year-olds in intrastate, I guess, is the way you would say
intrastate.
that. Yeah, we can't utilize that for every place because we are multi-state now. So we are interstate traffic. So.
And everything we've got in this room showed up on a truck somewhere
Absolutely.
At some point in time.
Yeah, it's an important industry, and I'm glad that we've taken you've stepped up and others have stepped up to make sure that we can get into this certification process and this training, because we need drivers, and it's nice to know that we were able to handle some of the stuff in-house. So.
Since we got Brian in here, let's talk a little bit about the environmental management that he has to do for Premier Ag. I imagine that's a big task, both on the fuel side and on the ag side.
Yes, lots of regulations. We're just finishing up with Tier 2s.
What's a Tier 2 for our listeners?
Tier 2 is where we're sending a list of each facility's inventory that goes to the federal EPA, goes to the state, and also goes to our local emergency planning committee. So we turn in an inventory of what we have at each site.
So they kind of know what's where.
What's where, yeah, and how much of it and how often is it there.
And we do a lot of training locally at the facilities with fire departments, first responders. They come in once a year probably and kind of tour the facilities, get to know the equipment or what we're doing, see what's on site.
Yeah, it's a very important relationship to have with our local fire departments. We just finished up big anhydrous training a couple weeks ago for all of Premier employees and the people that handle it and do kind of the maintenance and work with probably the most deadly substance that we handle, being anhydrous.
Yep. And internally, once a year, all of us go through the training as well.
Yep. So internally, not only are we doing hands-on training, we've got to cover all of our OSHA bases that we're doing on a monthly basis.
Yeah, I wish we could describe the scale of what that it covers at Premier Ag, because customers know that whether it's from the pressure test for the propane customer, the homeowner, or whether it's from the anhydrous wagons that the farmer gets, top to bottom, everything's checked and on a maintenance schedule.
Yes, we currently have Premier facilities that the state chemist has been at in the last week or so, looking at anhydrous tanks, checking dates on pop-off valves, checking dates on hoses, and making sure that we're in compliance. And so it's just never ending on what Premier employees are doing on a daily basis to stay in compliance.
Another thing that we talked about the grain facilities and different ones of these podcasts, but you were pretty integral in getting grain rescue tubes out in the last couple of years as well to our local fire departments, making sure that they are adequately supplied in the event of a rescue, someone getting in an entrapment in a grain bin. So kudos to that for sure. So working with the fire departments and because not all the stuff we handle are necessarily common every day. An event at our location, it needs some specialized training. So we're thankful for that. Any other thing you'd like to add about environmental?
I think just on the grain rescue tubes, I think and we've seen a couple here in the last 10 days, 2 weeks on some grain bin issues where we've had some entrapments. And we hit 6 counties a couple of years ago with the grain bin rescues. And I think where we need to go now is just continue to enforce that training with the fire departments on how to use the tubes and getting the things to assist the fire departments on training theirs, because we're dealing with volunteer fire departments. These aren't full-time firefighters. These are people like you and me and our farmers and our employees. We have several employees that are volunteer firefighters. So anything that we can do to outreach to help them is really important.
Explain what that is, a grain rescue tube.
So it consists of a set of 6 to 9, depending on what size you get. They're try to describe it without drawing with my hands, but they're long pieces of steel that get shoved down into the grain. Around you have somebody entrapped. You have 6 sections that are driven down in around them. This allows you to create an area that will pull, so you can pull the corn out away from them and not allow the corn to come back in and freeze them, because most of the time they're either completely buried or I've been in them before, and it's hard to imagine, but once you get much above your knees, you're not going to be able to move. You can't pull yourself out of them. You need assistance.
Yeah, that's if you've ever been a kid in a gravity bed wagon and playing the game, like how far can you go down and not get out? If you're ever the winner, which I won that one time, that's not the game you want to win. No. So I got the farthest down and couldn't get out. So, yeah, that is glad you're doing that, because more education is really what we need.
David, do you have anything else for the transportation side?
No. Just looking forward to getting these classes started.
Is there a way to reach you for that certification now, or are we ready for that? Are we to that point that we're taking?
We're getting close to it. The classroom portion of getting the CDL and upgrading your CDL, we're not ready quite for that yet. Obviously, if you get on the training provider registry, my email address is on there where people have actually started reaching out. The hazmat portion of it, that's kind of less regulated by the state of Indiana, so the first class of that's going to be on Tuesday. So we're moving quite along with that one.
Good.
We may end up just putting a plug on our website instead of the TPR something that we.
That was a lot.
We'll put a button on our website.
Yeah, took me 3 pages to print that.
No, that's good. And we'll have that on the bottom of the screen as well for those watching on YouTube. But Brian, you got anything else for us?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, so
No, I'm good.
Okay. Well, that's a shameless promotion of our. We do have some high ground merchandise now available. We have the cup, Sal.
You can see that. It's be a collector's item. All right, the first generation of them. So the originals.
The originals, that's exactly. And then these sweatshirts that you can see in the middle of the table, as well as we have some displayed on the edge of the room. So we'll have those available. And we don't want to see those out on the eBay for sale. We want you to wear those and promote them. Don't be trying to profit off of them. So, but anyway, I wanted to draw that and let everybody know that you can catch us on YouTube, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you would find podcasts. So nothing further, gents. We'll wrap this one up. Another episode of The High Ground, powered by Premier Companies.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.